You wouldn't be here if you hadn't already heard that yoga could help athletes in their performance in a great deal. So what I'd like to do is let's break down those benefits into two different categories. We're going to talk about the physical benefits of yoga for athletes, and then we'll get into the mental and emotional benefits as well. The number one reason I hear of athletes beginning a yoga practice is because they want to become more flexible. Now, flexibility in and of itself may not speak to any kind of major benefit for an athlete until we figure out exactly how that might be applied on the fields of play, right? And again, just increasing your flexibility or increasing your range of motion without having the strength behind it could actually lead to injury. But if we look at something as fundamental as speed, right? In most sports, speed is extremely important. How quick we can get from point A to point B matters, right? And the two different ways that we can affect speed in a positive way is to increase stride length or increase stride frequency. So we can increase the length of the stride or the number of times that we stride during the course of our running. And yoga can directly impact that stride length. Obviously, if we're able to open up the lower half, open up the hips, our stride will increase. Again, we want to make sure that we're complementing that with strength work as well, and we'll get into those balances and imbalances here in a moment. Considering that concept of increasing stride length and how it might make you faster, we can also look at that as a way to prevent injury. For example, if I'm too tight in my lower half, there runs the risk of injury, of potentially pulling a muscle, or maybe I've got an imbalance where one side is stronger and more flexible or stronger and less flexible. Either way, if we have imbalances one side to the other, eventually those imbalances tend to manifest as injuries as they make their way through the kinetic chain. So yoga can be a huge benefit for athletes in keeping us healthy, and actually not ever becoming injured. And then on the flip side, it can also help in injury recovery. If those injuries were caused by particular imbalances in the body, our yoga practice works to help bring everything back into balance on a physical level. How do these imbalances occur? All different kinds of ways. It might be repetitive movements from one side versus the other. If you think about a baseball player who's not a switch hitter, who doesn't hit from both sides of the plate, then every time they take a swing, they're engaging certain muscles that in a particular way that they're really not hitting and balancing out the other side. And through time, if we don't do things physically off of the field to work on these imbalances, those kinds of things can eventually result in injury. Now, in terms of recovering from these injuries, one way that yoga can help is typically when we're injured, we're not moving at all, right? And then that's when everything gets super tight, and those imbalances really embed themselves in our physique. And if we can even continue on a light yoga practice, depending upon the nature of the injury, we might be able to lessen the amount of time that we're actually off of the field of play. And then one other thing as it pertains to injury prevention and injury recovery is considering all of the other movement that we're involved in just in our training, right? Off of the field of play, in the gym, lifting weights, going through our plyometrics, those sort of things also can potentially create imbalances. And adding a yoga practice in, even at the end of your workout to bring yourself balance, can prove to be highly effective. And then lastly, from a physical perspective, in terms of how yoga can help athletes, rest and recovery are just as important as the work that we do in the training room. Yoga has a way of helping us elicit the relaxation response that we get when we use certain breathing techniques in our practice, which give us a personal relationship with our nervous system and really help us get our body into that state of relaxation where it can then recover from all of the work that we're putting it through. A well-rested and highly focused athlete is always going to perform better than one who is constantly pushing their body to the point of no return. Proprioception is another huge benefit for athletes practicing yoga. A lot of you out there might be asking, what exactly is proprioception? Well, it's being able to understand where your body is and how it's moving through space. You might ask, how does that affect an athlete's performance? Well, you might think of a wide receiver, running for a pass that's thrown, 20 yards ahead of them, and as they're running and they're leaping and they're reaching out with one hand, they have to know where that hand is in relation to the ball, as well as where do my feet need to land when I come down, so that I land in bounds. And having all of that happen in a split second with 80,000 people screaming at you in the stands. So understanding how your body is moving, where it's moving in space as you're performing is actually probably the most essential ability that we could possibly have as an athlete.
I've benefited greatly from yoga over my career. It's something I wish I had implemented from the very start. I know that it can definitely extend a player's career, avoid injuries. Going forward, as I'm retired, is something that I definitely want to continue with. I know the benefits you receive health-wise, body-wise, it's unmeasurable. Yoga's just allowed me to feel it one with my body, be more in tune with what's going on, with any ailments I may feel, and just allow me to attack, those different type of areas.
Now let's talk about the mental and emotional benefits for a yoga practice for athletes. Yogi Berra once said that baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical. So he obviously understood, at the very least, that what we've got going on between our ears plays a big part in our success on the competitive fields of play in sports. In sports, we talk about the zone, that place where everything you do goes right. And for any of us out there that have competed for any length of time at a particular sport, we've probably all experienced at least a little bit of this to some degree throughout our athletic careers. It's those moments in a basketball game where it's going in as soon as the ball releases your hand. Many times it's going in before it ever leaves your hand. You feel that confident, that grounded, that present. In baseball, it's when we talk about the ball looking like a beach ball coming up at you, that no matter what that pitcher throws at you, you see the ball, you recognize it, and you can make that decision whether or not you want to swing or take the pitch almost as soon as it leaves his hand, right? So we've all had those moments, or we've experienced those moments of great success. What is it about that is allowing all of the success to happen? We're present. We're in the moment. We're not being influenced by anything else that's going on outside of us, but we are right where we need to be, not being distracted in any kind of way. Yoga can teach us how to access that space before we ever hit the field of play. A lot of us have probably had that experience with the zone where, say in basketball, you hit your first shot. Once you hit that shot, the anxiety goes away. It's almost like, okay, we start to find that groove, and then away we go and off onto a nice streak of success. In baseball, I know you baseball players out there can certainly identify with how good it feels to get a hit your first at bat of the game, right? It's almost like the second time you step into the box, you've already had some success, you feel comfortable, and then more success happens. It's that idea a lot of times that we were 5 for 5 when we were already 1 for 1. Now, the flip side can happen too, right? You get up into the box and that first at bat goes horribly wrong. You strike out on 3 pitches, the guy just blows you away. The second time you step into the box, you're taking kind of that fear or that emotion or that I need to be a little bit quicker, or you start to change things that you normally wouldn't do in your approach. And now you're 0 for 5 when you were already 0 for 1. So what I mean by all of this is that yoga can help us be completely present before we ever get out onto the field, so that when we do start to compete, we're not taking other anxieties into that moment with us. We're just allowing ourselves to be right here, right now. Doesn't matter if the count's 0-2. I feel fully confident that whatever this guy throws me, I'm at least going to be able to foul it off, make contact, or do something with it. Not thinking I'm completely overmatched and I might as well go ahead and have a seat in the dugout right now. So yoga has a huge benefit in helping us get into that place of being completely present where we perform our best. Now, speaking to that idea of being present, yoga can also help us in terms of having to let go of what just happened in our competition, okay? Now, regardless of whether or not you had a great game or you had a horrible game, you know, you ran your best time you've ever run, you ran your worst time you've ever run. Regardless of how the results stack up, when we move on into the next day or our next competition, we want to be fresh, right? We never want to let ourselves get necessarily too high or too low to where what happened, say, a day ago starts to impact our performance today. By implementing a regular yoga practice, a regular yoga and meditation practice, we can learn to let go of what just happened so that we can be right here and right now. With all this talk about the zone and being fully present, let's just talk about just general emotions and how that affects what we're doing when we're performing in competition. In my experience, when I was younger, I was a really streaky baseball player. I felt like I was either hot or cold. And what I've learned in time and looking back at that is that was all going on between my ears. Nothing was really changing in the external environment. It was more or less how good I felt in myself and how confident I felt as to how well I performed. And I would usually, looking at my history, let that performance on the field kind of dictate how I was feeling upstairs. What yoga and meditation can help us do is kind of reverse that, right? Regardless of what's going on outside in the external environment, we find that place of calm and that focus inside to then carry that out onto the field of play. So maybe a lot of you out there are really emotional people like I am. As athletes, a lot of us are driven by emotion. We've seen how emotion can come into play, even in professional sports, impacting performance maybe in a positive way, and at the same time, we've seen emotion come in and affect people in a negative way. We've all seen that pitcher on the mound that all of this sudden can't find the strike zone. And it's almost like you're watching the gears grind in their head as they're looking at the catcher's mitt, and they have no idea where this ball's about to go, right? We've seen guys on the basketball court lose their heads, get emotional, get in fights, get completely taken out of their game, and watch their performance struggle as a result. Mindfulness, meditation, and yoga help us get completely present. They help us learn how to deal with those emotions. Mindfulness will actually teach us to discern whether or not this response to these emotions is helping us in any way. For example, the guy on the court that gets in an argument with the referee in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left on the clock and gets a technical could impact his team in a horribly negative way if he doesn't have control of his emotions. Or that guy that gets thrown out of the baseball game in the third inning when his team needs him the next 6 innings. So yoga can help us learn how to harness our emotions to help us rather than hinder us when we're in competition. If you're a competitive athlete and you're not quite sure what it is to have experienced the zone, well, we've all seen athletes in the zone. I like to think of Michael Jordan in his second year playing for the Chicago Bulls, coming back from a broken foot in the playoffs in that game that he scored 63 points on the Boston Celtics. That was being in the zone. It was like every time the ball went to Michael, you knew the ball was going in the hoop. Michael had a way of staying in the zone throughout his entire career in a way that that we don't normally see. You could think of the night that Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs on 3 pitches in the World Series against the Dodgers in Yankee Stadium. That was being in the zone. But we all have that ability. We all have the capability of finding that balance, that mental, emotional, and physical balance that allows us to perform at our very best. And meditation, mindfulness, and yoga can help us get there.